A notable decrease in COVID cases. The Public Services Minister responds to multiple unions and police investigate a shooting in Bimini. Good evening, everyone. I'm Leah Cooper with your JCN News for this Tuesday, September 14th. While COVID-19 cases are being added to the country's overall COVID count on a daily basis, the Ministry of Health citing a notable decrease in cases after an analysis of COVID-19 data for the period January 1st to September 12th. Health officials say this analysis began to show a decrease in the number of new cases of COVID-19 as a result of the aggressive vaccination campaign and the increased uptake of the vaccination in the country. During this period, there were some 11,584 confirmed COVID-19 cases. On average, 54 persons were hospitalized per week. Now, while data shows that the number of COVID-19 cases began to plateau during the first 2 weeks of August 2021, it is noteworthy to mention that for the next 4 weeks or 4 reporting cycles, there was a decrease in the number of COVID-19 cases. Health officials say it is expected that as the COVID-19 cases continue to decrease, there will be a decline in hospitalizations reported. As for COVID-19 deaths, during this same period, 302 deaths were reported. The Bahamas experienced a peak of 40 deaths during the week of the 22nd of August. Now, health officials acknowledged that as the cases continue to decrease, it is also expected that the number of deaths will decrease. They are also urging that as the country enters a general election, it is important that members of the public be very vigilant. Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis will speak to the national COVID-19 situation tomorrow on the 15th of September, and the Ministry of Health will host a press conference to provide the public with a COVID-19 update next week. Today's a very sad day for workers in this country. This much coming from the president of the Trade Union Congress, Obi Ferguson. His comments follow sickouts staged last week, Thursday, by immigration officers here in the capital, Grand Bahama, Exuma, and Bimini. Last week, Bahamas Customs, Immigration, and Allied Workers Union President Sloan Smith told our news team that there hasn't been any promotions since 2013, and a number of junior officers have yet to receive their confirmation letters dating back some 5 years. Here's TUC President Obi Ferguson.
When Sloan makes the point that they failed to follow procedures, they failed to honor what they agreed to, you can understand why. So I don't know why people are so surprised. We developed a workers' agenda. These are the concerns of the workers that say we play in politics. So why you've been there for 4.5 years, why wouldn't you call a meeting with the doctors? Why wouldn't you call a meeting with the nurses? Why wouldn't you call a meeting with customs and immigration? You see what Kyle had to do?
Union President Sloan Smith also brought up issues surrounding uniform allowance. He says the government has failed to honor the contract in which it agreed to pay 131 customs officers their uniform allowance of $250.
Effective the 1st of January 2018, it should have gone from $200 to $250. Everybody else in customs and immigration is getting it, but this 131 custom officers are not getting it at all. And we engaged the control of customs and asked her to look into it with a view of bringing closure to it, which we thought was a very simple thing to do. After all, you signed a contract. You can look at this, all right? That's a part of the contract. Having communicated on a couple of occasions, we also communicated it to the Public Service Permanent Secretary, Mr. Nella Bodie. We communicated it to the Financial Secretary, Mr. Marlon Johnson. And you will note at the back of that those two persons signed that agreement. So the issue of paying, and you can just look at that as well, the issue of paying ought not to have been a major issue. It's just a matter of them engaging their account section and cause them to simply pay the thing out.
And from 2018 to now, Mr. Smith says that's around $2,300 per officer. The next issue raised was how the government's employing immigration officers.
The immigration office is an office. It's a constitutional office. And you can't just arbitrarily hire somebody and call them an immigration officer. And as a result, what do we have? We have the appointment of Mr. Clarence Russell as Director of Immigration. We have the appointment of Mr. Stuart Curtis as an Assistant Director of Immigration. And we have the appointment of a gentleman by the name of David C. Roll as a Senior Immigration Officer. Now here's the thing. Do we follow the Constitution, or do we do things to help our friends? Because that's all that turns out to be. Because based on what we understand from the Constitution and from the Immigration Act, there's only one way to employ an immigration officer. Now what has that done to the whole body of customs and immigration specifically? It took opportunities from people who've been in the system all these years. It shows you where the focus of our employer has been.
Mr. Smith contends that the sitting administration does not care about workers. Off the heels of various public unions holding sickouts and protesting, Minister of Public Service Brensel Roll says that he has continually tried to work with the public service unions and other unions to meet their demands. He spoke to reporters right before this morning's cabinet meeting.
Unions do what unions do. They perhaps react based on the times. I was active in the union, so I know what the unions do. I have a good relationship with the Public Service Union and other unions. And what I try to do is to work with them to make sure their working conditions were satisfactorily. I said to them from last year that I could not speak specifically on monies, but my duty was to make sure that the environment in which they work is safe and they are comfortable, and that's what we sought.
Yesterday, members of the Bahamas Public Service Union took action and staged sickouts at airports on several family islands, and one of their complaints, were those workers not getting any increase in benefits in years. Minister Roll says that those in the public service received an increment every year until they reached a service bar, and he cannot speak to those airport workers who are not in the Public Service Union. Minister of National Security Marvin Dames defending the government's decision to allow quarantined individuals to vote in the upcoming general elections. Just before cabinet meeting this morning, Minister Dames responded to inquiries as to why special provisions have not been made for this group of people to vote.
It has always been our intention to treat the environment as if every voter is quarantined, and that's our intentions. I mean, it didn't work perfectly due to the advanced polls, but you can expect some changes coming into the election day.
Due to an amendment to the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery number 2, it indicates that those in quarantine who are registered to vote will be permitted to leave quarantine to cast their vote. Now, last week, many polling stations during the advanced polls were described as chaotic, with long lines and crowds of people trying to cast their ballots. Minister Dames expressed that some of the issues they had were expected. However, that will not be the case on Thursday.
As I said last week, that was the first. 2017, we had some 3,000 plus voters. This election, after the amendments to the Act, we had in excess of 30,000. So we went into it expecting that there would be some issues here and there. And this is what going back to the drawing table is all about. I met with the parliamentary commissioner and his team yesterday, as well as the top brass of the Royal Bahamas Police Force and Defense Force. They're currently going through a series of debriefings and briefings, and you can expect come election day that you would see any number of those issues that you saw at the advanced polls are rectified.
Minister Dames contends that as a government, their every intention is to ensure that every registered voter is given a chance to exercise his or her right during the elections period, and that they will ensure that every step is being taken for that to happen in the safest manner possible. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.